well, there's a pathway. Maybe there's something interesting back there. So I went back there. And as soon as I entered the thicket, I felt high, like out of this world high, like euphoric high. Like it's like, I can't even describe how happy the feeling was.
Elly Flippen has a new book out, and this is called Conjunction World, conjunction.world.
Yeah, it's conjunction.world.
Just give me the backstory. Give me the backstory about this.
So the backstory is I have been watching for a while now with the remote viewing community and the UFO community, which Ingo always said should really be united. But even back in 1995, he was saying they're separate. There's so much infighting. There's so much like fighting over the same little scraps and not realizing that the two are actually combined. And he said so because, especially with abductees, the main way that they were communicated with was telepathically. So you felt like the two should be sort of combined. And now we're sort of seeing that happening, right? With the remote viewing community is now really going towards contact, and they're calling it remote viewing. So they're calling orbs, or they're encouraging the contact with some sort of higher intelligence and some sort of entity, and sort of the bucket they're using to phrase this under is remote viewing. And Ingo is very clear about what remote viewing was. Remote viewing, well, in terms of controlled remote viewing, and he said he got to define it because he coined the term. And the main factor with that was feedback. And it was really just a protocol to stay in your body and pull information to you. And then that information could be verified in the form of feedback. And that really was the circle of what remote viewing is. But because remote viewing sort of has this legitimacy because the government did research in that area, it seems like it's sort of the circle of what remote viewing is has been sort of expanded to encompass what would have been called or is called channeling or mediumship or telepathy or some sort of contact with higher intelligence or some sort of psychic probing, because remote viewing has a legitimacy to it. Whereas like channeling or contacting or even just the term psychic has some sort of iffy kind of connotation to it. So it gets the label of remote viewing. And that is far from what Ingo envisioned what would be remote viewing. Remote viewing was simply a protocol to gather information transfer. And so I've sort of been seeing this extension of what is happening between UFO community, the remote viewing community, the creep of the term itself, remote viewing, but also because Ingo said we are not alone on this planet. And so I wanted to sort of figure out, well, if the remote viewing community, the UFO community is sort of converging at this contact nexus point, and Ingo said we're not alone on this planet, the only way to know, which Ingo said, the only way to know for yourself is to do it yourself, to have firsthand experience. So you can listen to whoever you want to, but you'll never really understand for yourself something unless you experience it for yourself. So all you'll get from somebody else is their interpretation through their viewpoint, through whatever frame of reference they have based on their cultural upbringing, their education, the way that they were brought up, and how they frame that experience, which could be entirely different for you. You're relying on somebody else's impression to form an understanding for yourself. So I really wanted to figure out, okay, if we're not alone on this planet, how do you go about figuring out if we are not alone? How do you go about figuring that out? And at the same time, I don't really want to partake in this sort of contact or encouraging entities to communicate with me. So how do I do that? And that's really what began my journey.
So where was the first trip?
So actually the first trip was not intentional. And I think we talked about this in a prior episode, was when I went to the mountains in San Diego, and it was on a Thanksgiving trip. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really intending to have some sort of spiritual or metaphysical or any kind of contact experience. I was simply there on a trip and ended up interfacing with what I believe were entities and some sort of guide, some sort of protective guide, but also some barrier of some sort between our reality and some other reality or some other dimension, which is on the other side of that dimension were some very evil, nasty, intent entities. And I could feel it. I couldn't see them. I was with others and the others could see them. but I couldn't see them, but I could definitely feel them. And it was at that point that I realized, okay, we are not alone. There is something else here.
That worked.
There's something I hear. That worked. And it was really fascinating because the entity that I ended up interacting with, which came across as a human being to me, actually appeared in a white Mercedes sedan.
Oh,
which is so fascinating to me.
Wow.
So we were in the middle of the desert. We were in a rented SUV. We had gone well deep into the desert. We were probably 4 or 5 miles deep into the desert. Our SUV was covered in dust, and all of a sudden a white Mercedes sedan appeared over this little hill where separating the desert from this parking area, not covered in dust. Not like our SUV, which was coated in this sort of fine gray powder. And in this parking area, which I would say like circularly was maybe 50 or 100 feet around, so enough for like more than several cars to park in that area, actually pulled up and parked immediately right behind our vehicle, which was incredibly unnerving. Because they didn't, at that point, I thought, here's this person. Okay, they're in a nice car, but they parked literally 3 feet away from our vehicle and right behind our vehicle. And I was afraid that maybe we had entered like cartel territory or some sort of drug or human trafficking or something, that we were in the middle of something that was probably dangerous. This is why the person had parked so close to us, that maybe they were coming just to like warn us out of this area, because it's very isolated. There was no one around. And out came this man, and he was huge in the sense of he was extremely tall. He wasn't like heavy. He was just extremely tall. And when he stood, I actually had to look, like he blocked the sun. Like I had to look up at him. And he was dressed appropriately, but each item was from a different era. Let's say like sunglasses from the 80s and boots from the like 60s and shorts and the top. Like nothing was from the same decade. So it was in shorts and boots and this shirt and sunglasses, but they were not the same decade, which I thought was really odd. But again, I was feeling very afraid because here he parked so close to us and he'd come right up. And I was sort of, being the Capricorn, I was the one that was like talking to him because he came and he said, are you here to see the pictograph? And I hadn't realized that we were going to go see this pictograph. We had just sort of stopped at the stop. We were on the trail to see a longer pictograph trail, which is in the Anza Borrego State Park, which we were. But this one, we weren't sure if this was a pictograph trail. And I said yes, but again, we weren't sure if this was the right trail. And all of a sudden he turned and he left, but he went to run, but he didn't run. He waddled, which just was so strange to me. He was pretty fit looking. I mean, he was tall, but he was very fit looking. And instead of running, it was like this strange waddle. And then he did this strange waddle all the way back. And he handed me this piece of paper. So I was interacting with him. And he pointed down and said, go to number 7, just go to number 7. And then he hopped back into his car and he's like, there's so much more to see.
Like, every day's normal here. Yeah.
I'm like, you're looking at, there is everything to see. We're in the middle of the desert. It spans for miles. There's just gray dust and cacti and like desert flowers, but that like is it. There's like nothing else spectacular around. Like, what more to see are you going to go see? And furthermore, he just went back the way that he came. If he was really off to see more than DC, he should have kept going past us, but he didn't. I was watching his vehicle, and again, I'm still thinking, like, are we in some cartel? Like, is he scoping out to make sure we don't go, like, is there some, like, human trafficking thing, like, beyond number 7 that we're not supposed to go to? Like, okay, they're okay, but I'll make sure they don't go so far. So I was really concerned from, like, a physical damage point of view. And watched his car go, and his car didn't kick up dust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of a clue.
And so, and so really it wasn't, it was just everything was odd. We did get to number 7. There is a pictograph there. That's where the person I was with could touch the rock the pictograph is on and felt it was vibrating, could see the entities beyond the rock. I felt just an incredible amount of dread, an incredible amount of being just watched. It was just an overwhelming feeling of darkness. and fear and really fear for our vehicle. And which I elaborate in more detail as sort of the first story, and really kind of left it at that. And that was sort of like the prequel of my adventuring of that story. And I really didn't put it together until Rebecca Hoffberger, the founder and former director of the American Visionary Art Museum, she left a message for me. She had been watching a show on those Russian teenagers in the 1950s, the Dyatlov, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly.
Dyatlov Pass.
Incident. Dyatlov Pass.
Uh-huh.
Incident in the 1950s, where they set out on this wonderful, like, hiking adventure. It's winter time. I guess it's in, like, this early spring, late winter, but in Siberia, where they're very seasoned hikers and skiers, and so set off together to hike this pass. And when they didn't show up, their family and friends became very concerned, and as soon as they could, there was a rescue party that was sent, and what they found was just kind of blew their minds at the campsite. Right? Yeah. And that's been well documented. The reason Rebecca got in touch with me is because I had told her about this pictograph. So the pictograph in Anza Borrego was what looked like a figure with their arms up. And to me, the way I interpreted, I said I had an experience where Ingo's 357, we talked about this before with the shaman, and I had drawn a figure I'd seen during that experience, and the shaman had told me that's a healer. And so that what I had drawn was the same kind of figure. And so when I saw it in Anza Borrego, I said, oh, that's exactly like the figure I saw in my mind when the shaman came to 357 in the 1990s. And the shaman had told me that was a healer. So there's a healer with their arms up, and then a bigger figure above them with 6 toes pointing down. And the way I interpreted it was the healer had created some sort of boundary between a figure that had 6 toes. And when I looked that up, like 6 toes, those are the offspring between angels and humans, right? These sort of giant figures, sort of, I don't know, like demi-angel, demi-humans. So I recognized, okay, this is probably some sort of spiritual entity with the 6 toes. So why I had told Rebecca about this experience in this pictograph, and so why she had called me, is because in watching this TV show about the 1950s expedition, the rescuers found a camera at the campsite, and they developed the photographs. And the photographs are what you would expect from a group going on some sort of hiking adventure, right? They're, all of them smiling, a group of them together. They're all in their skis and snow attire and, just having fun, as any group would have sort of pictures. And one of the pictures is one of these members of the party is on their skis on snow, looking at a tree where the bark has been peeled back, and there is a marking on that tree. And that marking looked very similar to the pictograph from Anza Borrego that I had described to Rebecca. And that's why she had texted me. And when I went to look more for this photograph that she was talking about, this individual looking at the marking on the tree, that's when I learned about this whole roll of film. And the last image that was developed, it's totally black except for a white orb. And I got tingles at that point. So it made me think, did they have some sort of supernatural encounter? Was this marking, like I sort of interpreted at Anza Borrego, some sort of barrier, some sort of warning? Some people, this is Mansis, who are the indigenous people to the region. Was it a marking of their territory? Is it a marking of just hunting and sort of say this is where you can find certain kind of deer? Or is it a marking of some kind of other territory? Because I found with the Mansi stories of people from other dimensions, and spirits. And so is this a warning that you're entering the land of these other spirits? And is that what they photographed, the last photograph, the orb? Did they truly encounter something supernatural? And that's really what said, I need to go find out.
Yeah. I'm familiar with some of that story. I think they actually sent a group in the past 10 years to go follow up on that, Russia. And I haven't heard any update from that. The other thing was that they found radiation at that site, which was unusual. A lot of different stories about that expedition. Yeah. And it's still unanswered, really technically unanswered. They have a lot of potential explanations of, secret work being done, and that, there's still a huge unanswered question about what happened to them. Now, the thing with this is this launched your own need to know, and so you traveled around to try and get your own up close and personal, I'm going to stay here overnight kind of thing. What was the most intense experience from your expedition?
I would say it was Judaculla Rock outside of Asheville, North Carolina. And that was because so when I decided that I was going to go on this journey, I started by looking at obviously pictographs and pectographs, right? Because to me, that is the surest indication that people of the past have had some sort of indication. That's the way I look at it. And when you look at sort of the historical record of these pictographs or petrographs, you see the commonalities between things in the Americas and things in Europe or in Asia or in Australia. They're commonalities that there's no way for people of these different places to be experiencing the same kind of and representing the same kind of thing. So to me, it says, well, they may have had some interaction with something other. And so that's where I wanted to start. I wanted to start at these places where maybe people of the past have had interactions with things of an other nature. And so I had looked at sites that were sort of around on the east, in the mid-Atlantic, East Coast area of the United States, and what would be close by. And one of them was the Cherokee, I would say, sacred site, which is Judaculla Rock. So Judaculla was something very important to the Cherokee tradition, and so wanted to be respectful of that, but also wanted to go and experience it. So all I really knew, all I did was sort of identify where these sites were. I didn't want to do any reading on them. I didn't want to know more about them. I just kind of wanted to know how to get there. And from a logistic standpoint, like what was there? Is there parking there? Are there restrooms there? Are there facilities? Like, what to expect in terms of like, if I got there, where would I park and how would I get to it? Mm-hmm. But that was it, limited to that. And so I knew that Judaculla Rock was sort of south and maybe a little east of Asheville, and that it was half a mile off a road. And although it is public access, it is not open when it's dark outside. And that's it. And there's no restroom facilities, and it's just basically the rock, and that's it. So don't plan to spend a lot of time there. Just know that it's there, but there's not much else to do once you go there. That's really all I knew about it.
Okay.
So, and sort of just identified these sites. And then one day I just woke up and had this feeling that I needed to be there by noon. Like it was really important to be there by noon. I don't know why. Yeah. But I was like, okay, I have to be there by noon. And that was going to be a few hour drive for me. So I, figured out how to get there and how long it would take to get there, and got, to get there right at noon, what it would take. And somewhere along the line, Google Maps directed me off for just like a few minutes. And I was like really mad at Google Maps. Like, why did it take me off the main highway for 2 minutes? But it did. So I didn't end up getting there until 12:02 p.m. But when I did, and this is the first time I sort of experienced, there was a white pickup truck parked at the beginning of this half a mile road to the rock. And now this is the second white vehicle that have come up. So the first one was on Zabrego. Now it's a white pickup truck. And I did see a couple, maybe about my age. It was sort of late winter, so it was not cold, but it wasn't warm. But they were walking along the road, which I felt maybe they belonged to this white pickup truck, but kind of interesting that they had parked there because it's in the Smoky Mountains, so there's a lot of white walking and hiking trails around. So interesting that they had parked there to walk this road. But nonetheless, I could see them because when they drove along, I passed them. It's a dirt road, driving really slowly, and I passed them and I waved them through the window and they waved back. And then I just parked at the end of the road because that's literally the parking lot at the end of the road.
I see the car
And
in the picture. You've got the picture from the book on the
yeah,
website. Yeah, there it is.
yeah,
It's a tiny little sliver of something.
yeah, the tiny, tiny sliver of a white pickup truck at the end. But there's no people, right? So there's no people in the photograph. But I felt like they were real.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, after you park, you can see the rock. It's surrounded by a sort of a wood decking structure. I think there are pictures on the website of it, so you can kind of see you walk down it. It says like no walking or climbing on the rock, so you just got to follow this wooden pathway around the rock. And it's quite large and quite impressive, but it's extremely old, so it's very worn because it's in the weather. So it's hard to really make out what is carved into it. So there's carvings into the rock, what is there. But in my reading of it, I had read, just so I would know a little bit, like that it was a place to go, is that the Cherokees considered it Judical as a portal. So his portal to his other realm, this hunting god. So his portal to his other realm. So I was thinking it was going to be a portal of some sort. And so as I stood there just kind of photographing all these carvings, you kind of on this walkway kind of back from it, waiting for something magical to happen, right? Waiting for like, okay, some shimmering thing's going to happen and some portal to some other dimension is going to come through and I'm going to be here to witness it. And there was nothing. Still nothing. Nothing's happening. Nothing. I was like, well, it's a beautiful day, and I didn't feel anything either. Like I didn't feel anything like magical or evil or anywhere in between. It just felt like I was in the middle of a cow pasture, which is basically where this rock is. It's about the feeling of it. So I noticed that the walkway goes over a little wooden bridge. It's very small. You could see it in the pictures, right? And then there's a thicket behind there. And I'm like, oh, well, there's a pathway. Maybe there's something interesting back there. So I went back there. And as soon as I entered the thicket, I felt high, like out of this world high, like euphoric high. Like it's like, I can't even describe how happy the feeling was. Like maybe it's like laughing gas, or if you were under anesthesia but awake and like really happy, like just bliss, complete bliss. Yeah, complete bliss. And then all of a sudden I felt like little hands all over me. And the way my mind interpreted it was little fairy hands. And they seemed really interested in my hair. Like I could feel little things fluttering all around. And so then I just took out my camera and I just started to take pictures everywhere, just everywhere. And I have those on the website too. Yeah. And so I felt like there were thousands and thousands, and then more were coming. And this blissful feeling, this high of incredible proportions, but I was still knew where I was and I knew what was happening. It was just like such a relief, like if you were the lotus eaters in Greek mythology, right? like I can't, maybe that's the equivalent of it, just like maybe that's what drugs do. I don't know. I haven't experienced. I have not done drugs, so I couldn't equate the experience. But
you don't have to have a drug to have that experience. I can tell you.
Yeah,
sometimes that's what the energy does, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, hey, more.
Whoa, yeah, like so overwhelming, and but then all of a sudden I could feel like through all of this happiness and all these little hands, I could feel a darkness. Like I couldn't put words to it, but I could feel something. But I was so overwhelmed and overpowered by this euphoric state, it didn't register entirely. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, I heard this voice where it was like, like you're only supposed to be here 15 minutes. It's time to go. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is like the best experience and I'm not going anywhere. I don't know what voice you are, but I'm not leaving this place.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Okay.
Like, what kind of voice are you? Like, who are you to interlude on this? I'm like, what? No. Why would you need to go? And then I could hear like, why? You party pooper, like you just, bringing me down. Why bring me down? This is amazing. Mm-hmm. then all of a sudden I could hear the couple talking, which is odd because it was kind of like far away from the road, but like I could hear them like they were next to me. Mm. And then the voice was like, you're wasting your time. You need to go. You can only be here 15 minutes. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so like I kind of stumbled, but I kept taking more pictures. And then the more I moved closer to the exit of the thicket, the more I could feel that darkness. Mm-hmm. Then I kind of got outside the thicket, and that's when I felt like something was following me with evil intentions. Mm-hmm. And I started like put my camera up and pretended I was taking selfies just to take it behind me. And I put those photographs on the website too, but I was still feeling the like very happy effects too. But now I could feel the more negative thing creeping in. And again, I took more pictures of the indentations or the carvings on the rock. And then, but I really liked the high feeling. So I was like, I think I looked at my emails and I was like scrolling my emails, and I think I was deleting things. I have no idea what I deleted, which is like not really in my mind. And then the voice came back again, like, you need to go now. Yeah. And I was like, what is up with this voice? Like, stop. Why do I need to go? But really said, you need to go now. And so then I did. I made my way back up to the car and got into the car, and then I took some pictures. There's a Cherokee medicine garden. I took pictures of that, and then I took pictures of like me looking back towards the beginning of the road where you could sort of see the white truck, sort of, and then drove off, and passed the couple exactly where I had passed them on the way in. And then I was thinking, and so they're closer to the beginning of the road, so half a mile down. I was like, how did I hear them when they're so far away, like sounding next to me? So obviously something happened with time as well, like some sort of time space thing, and in all of this. And then drove away, and it was probably a good hour and a half on the road when the withdrawal of what had happened hit me, like coming off some sort of high or off of some sort of drug. Yeah. Like I literally felt a withdrawal, and it was painful. It was actually very painful. And that's when I stopped to look at the photographs, and I could see there was this strange shadow at the beginning of the thicket that kind of goes up in a different way than the shadows of all the other trees. And I recognized, I think that was the darkness that was there. And when I did research on all of this, so that's what I do in the book. I talk about my experience, and then I research it to try to understand it. And I'm trying to understand it for myself. Like, what is this? And the closest thing I could come to is I wondered if when people are abducted in some capacity, they're like put out in some way, right? They don't have memory of what they have, or the sort of the fairy tales or the folklore around fairies, interactions with them are very similar, but also they talk about fairies taking children, and the jinn of Islamic lore taking people, just like our UFOs take people. And I wonder if what I experienced was some sort of like to put me in a state, and then would I have been taken? It made me wonder if it was something similar to that.
I love that, because you got the whole experience. Not only did you get the immersion and the feeling of, I don't want to leave, I want to stay, I want to stay. When you get that euphoric feeling, it's like there's nothing better, and there's nothing that we experience in real life that compares to that. So you got the experience to be able to understand and articulate it for somebody else, because that's what the protection was about, to get you in and get you out. It can be so overwhelming when that happens that you are disoriented, and sometimes you forget where you are. Like you said, you went through your phone and deleted photos and whatever, but and so I'm hearing you give an exact instance of what can happen when you don't listen to the warning that says time to go.
Yeah, time to go. And it was very loud. Okay. It was very intrusive, and I didn't appreciate it in the moment.
No. No, I'm in the middle of something. Please go away.
why are you doing this? I haven't done yet. This is awesome. Why would I like this? Like being on a roller coaster ride, and you're like, why would I want to get off? I want to get on again. I want to get on again. I want to get on again. Yeah. So, and then the whole withdrawal, which was just very, very painful. And then I recognized, okay, so it's not a portal in the sense of there's a shimmery thing that you step through. Mm-hmm. I think it's just a place where the frequencies of the area might be, I'm able to reach, my perception is able to reach further into their frequency range. Yeah. That's the way I looked at it. Yeah.
Sometimes they call it a liminal space, which is an in-between dimensions where they overlap. And then, I mean, they're all over the world, but that having somebody say, okay, here's the exact spot. And just because somebody goes there doesn't mean they'll experience it. It has to do with they told you a specific time. So the planets were in the right space and you were in the right space and, the whole 9 yards. There was a reason for that timing. And your 2 minutes didn't make any difference. However, the fact that you honored it was important.
Yes. And the people were there. Mm-hmm. And so again, I wondered if they were real people or not because they were attached to a white vehicle. And in my book, I talked about at every location, there has been a white vehicle, which I find pretty remarkable.
Yes, that's incredible. I don't think that's an accident. I think, and for one thing, you noticed. So you're observant and you're paying attention, and it's kind of a bookmark.
Absolutely. So for me, that was the most profound feeling experience that I had, where I think I directly interfaced with some entities of some sort.
When you're going on these tours and you have pictures on your website at conjunction.world, you try to describe for the best you can what it's like being there. And have you had people, aside from the tall guy, I wonder if he was like a tall white, have you had other people come up to you and say something that was odd?
No, most of the time I've just been on my own. So the only time where there were other people, and I think they were real people, is when I was in Sago Canyon in Utah. And that's where these pictographs and petroglyphs are from many different cultures of indigenous people for the area, and probably the most famous ones on the wall. You definitely look at those and go, oh, I think these people were interacting with some entities. I mean, to me, there's no other explanation for it because they are specific and they are very detailed and very similar to things in other places, not only in Utah, but in other parts of the world. But my interaction there was with a cow.
Okay.
With the cow, and I talk about it, I call it, the chapter's called Holy Cow, because there were cows on the road. Like, at first I couldn't see them. I thought maybe they were bears. They were hard to make out. But as I got closer, I recognized they were 3 calves with 1 cow, which I thought was interesting. I was like, can cows have triplets? And there's just, cows can't have triplets. So very fascinating. The 1 cow was just with 3 calves alone. That's all it was. A cow with 3 calves. No other cows, just her.
The Trinity. The Holy Trinity.
Yeah. So very, very fascinating. And so I kind of stopped, and she looked at me like, what are you doing here?
Don't you know better, human?
Don't you know better? You shouldn't be here. But I went and again, I had interactions with this white SUV when I was in the parking lot, and I couldn't find them to save my life. Again, I talk about all I did was, okay, it has a restroom, there is parking, this is where you can find them, there is private land, so don't trespass, but this is public, so you can access them here. And they're really easy to find, but I had such a hard time finding them. I couldn't find them, even though they literally, I talk about, I was taking photographs. I had seen this black and red on the mesa top from far off, was photographing that. So when I got closer, I continued to photograph it, and I couldn't see that the pictographs were actually directly below that. So I'm standing right in front of them and photographing this black and red, and I'm like, where are the pictographs?
It's a human thing.
They're literally, and then actually, I look back at my photographs, I'm like, they're in the lower corner of my photographs.
They're great photos. I love them. This is excellent. Right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're right there, but I can't see them. I'm right there. I'm like, where are they? And I'm like taking these like strange paths. I'm like, they're supposed to be easy to find. I literally could not see them. That is crazy. That is crazy.
So the picture on the front of this page is from the chart, the handout, the pamphlet? You've got it circled. Yeah. You've got the beings circled here in the big.
Yes, like I'm saying, here they are, and I'm like, where are they? I'm like, they're literally right. I'm literally standing right in front of them when I'm taking the photographs. Right, literally, they're like at my eye level, but I don't see them. That's when I heard a vehicle come, and so I was like, well, they came in, and I had made my way out into the parking lot. Still not able to see these pictographs. And they literally parked right next to me, and like they practically ran me over. I'm like, how is that even possible? There's space to park here. You didn't need to come this close.
Right.
And I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 couples. And I say this, I can't remember. There were multiple people. And I was like, okay, I'm going to watch them and see where they go find them.
Somebody knows what's going on.
Since they practically ran me over, I'll just kind of watch them. But because of the brush and because of where the restroom is, it was hard to see where they were going, and it didn't look like they were going any differently than where I had been. Right? I was like so confused by that. And then another car came, and I talk about this, and it was another white car, and then this blue Jeep came that had come earlier with a father and two teenage kids. And I was like, this is Party Central. Like, what's going on here? It was sort of like, we don't want you to be alone. And I was like, I just want to be alone to experience the art. Why can't I be alone? They're like, no, it's not going to work out like that.
Glad you couldn't see the pictures anyway. You needed somebody to show you.
Show me where they were.
Yeah. Well, that was your backup group going, okay, look, she's a little slow. Let's send in some reinforcements.
Like she can't see it. And it's so funny. And so I did find all 3 panels. There are 3 panels, 3 different time periods, 3 different cultural interfaces, if you will, and peoples responsible for these. But the second panel is pictographs, so the carvings, but they're done over pictographs. But the way the light is, you can tell that there's some painting on the rock, but you can't really make it out. And the carvings pretty much cover it to a certain extent. So they're high up. So, looking up photograph, it's hard to see. But I do recount sort of a lucid dream, maybe, visioning experience that I had. And so when I go back and I looked, I kind of put my visioning experience with the rock painting that is below the petroglyphs, the carvings. I can see they marry my experience. And that's when I talk about, when I sort of put it all together and say, well, this, I believe, was a spot where shamans or medicine women would come to do some sort of visioning experience, right? This spot, very sacred spot. And when they have these visioning experiences, they interact with something. And definitely that first panel, I think, is what they interacted with. So they painted what they interacted with. But when I looked at the second panel, which is younger than the extraordinary panel, so it's but it's not as young as the third panel that I couldn't see. I could see that what it looked like was like a chain of people presenting what I believe were like orbs or their souls or their essences to these large figures who were taking these orbs and then passing it on to another large figure. And then you look and they're holding like a human by the neck, like they're strangling the person by the neck. And I was like, oh my gosh, this does not look friendly at all. Right? Like, and so the way I interpret it was, the oldest panel is, okay, this is a visioning spot, and this is what is waiting for you on the other side. And then that second panel that's sort of carved over it is like, if you think that these things are nice, these things are really deceptive, right? Like you're coming here to have some sort of spiritual experience. What's really happening is they're taking your soul. That's the way I interpreted it. And I was like, no wonder the cow was really mad at me going in there.
Another gullible human. See ya.
Right.
And they have to worry about abductions too, so they kind of know their program.
They know their program. And so on the way out, like the cats were gone. I don't know where they went, but it was just her on the way back. And we had this interaction. I was looking at her in the rearview mirror and basically could hear her saying, go and don't come back, and don't ever go to one of these rock art sites again. Like, okay.
Is she the one who's kind of a light brown tan color? Is that the picture of her in the background? Yeah. She looks very, very helpful. Not like the Walmart greeter, but
Yeah.
The exit plan.
Get going. And then, of course, I don't run into another vehicle coming or going, which is fascinating. So what I tried to do was, how do I understand this for myself? What are these experiences? And then the research around it. And by the end of all of this experiencing, I decided, which Ingo says too, is that we spend so much time trying to figure out who they are, what they are, but we really don't have a concept. We only know like our frame of reference. You're filtering it through your frame of reference about who they are or what they are or what their real agenda is. And so the better time to be spending is on working on yourself and improving yourself and expanding your perception and an awareness for yourself. And that's what I really came away with from the whole experience.
I want to go back to your cloud picture you have. To me, it looks like a face. It's kind of, the lips are flat, there's a nose, and there's a winking eye. One is open, and the other one is kind of winking. So what was the relevance of that for you?
So that was after I had gone to Sago Canyon, and I was sitting in the hot tub so I had rented. I talked about I had gone to Utah to see a UFO because I had read the website on like where the most UAPs are seen, and really through my research identified that this Moab in Utah was like the place if you were going to see a UFO UAP. And in my little delusional mind, I was like, oh, I'll just spend 2 days. It'll be no problem. I'll see a UFO. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right?
Okay. Yeah.
In my mind, that's what I did. And so I had arranged to one of these glamping tents with a stargazing panel. I was just going to think, oh, this is great. I can just lay in the tent at night and look up and UFOs will be flying all overhead.
Why not?
But then they called the next day after I made my reservations and said they had overbooked and they could put me in a bigger tent, but it wouldn't have the stargazing panel. And I was like, well, what use is that? I don't need the tent, right? I need the panel.
Yeah.
So I had to. So I canceled, and then I ended up finding this cabin, which was on top of the mountains that are just outside of Moab. They're so like part of the range that if you just Moab's very close to the border with Colorado, and if you just kind of kept going over the range, you would get to Telluride, which is where Ingo was born. And so I was like, oh wow, this is gonna be really high up in the mountains, the La Salle Mountains, and this cabin is up there, and it was like cheaper than not only the glamping tent, but like the airport hotel that I had booked the night before. I was like, you can't beat that. This is a cabin up in the mountains. I mean, now I'll be super close to the UFO.
Yeah, a little higher. So many ways.
So I was like waiting for the UFO to come, and nothing happened. That's when I had my visioning experience instead.
Okay. You don't call us, we'll call you. The UFOs are like, we haven't put the word out yet. So that's why the clouds are why I see the wink in the clouds. Like, see, you didn't even know.
I'm like, so I'm waiting. Like, I'm like, I can't believe that I didn't see you. Like, I don't know what kind of delusional person would think that of course I'm going to see like tons of UFOs. But that was me. That's and so okay. So with this mountain cabin came a hot tub. So I was like in the morning before the sunrise in the hot tub, I had this strange feeling, and I looked up, and right before the sunrise was that cloud figure. That doesn't it looks like a face, doesn't it? It looks exactly like a face.
I think so. Oh, good. Okay. We see, of course, we do that. That's what they say. Well, your mind does that automatically, but at the same time, sometimes it is the point of what you interpret, how you interpret, that's the way it works. So no matter, if you're trying to say, well, here's a scientific reason and here's a psychology reason, and yet then there's the shamanic reason. And sometimes things happen for a reason, and it's nobody else's business because it's between you and that.
Yes.
And so
yes.
with that other vision, what was it?
The vision was, I was just laying there in the bed, and I could see hundreds of women coming up the mountain in indigenous dress, various time periods. And they weren't together, but they were working like they were together, but it wasn't like they did this together. It was though this was some sort of ritual that over time people did. So they followed the same path, but they weren't. Does that make sense? They weren't all coming together as one. They all came, but at different time periods, following the same path. So then they circled the cabin in a circle, and they held out what I interpret like little round objects, but the way my mind interpreted it was like birds. But they were very circular light-like, and then they let them go, like they were flying away.
Wow.
And that was the last thing I remember. And when I looked at that, the rock art on the second panel, that chain looked exactly, except for they were a circle around the cabin, but it was like a chain. They were like a chain around the cabin. And then they're holding out little round white things that flew away.
Spirit. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, like soul keepers, and then they release them. See, that's even, to me, that's more relevant than the UFO. The UFO is out there, but what you had was an internal and a real engaging interaction with the memories and the soul communication, soul language.
Yeah. And then when I looked at the panel and I said, oh my gosh, it's exactly the same thing, except for they're handing off their little soul spirits to some entity, and that entity is taking it and then handing it off to an entity that's not treating humans very well. And I mean, I don't, holding a human by the neck didn't seem very friendly to me.
If the body's already dead, then they're just saying, here, this is the carcass, we've got the soul, and not necessarily keeping the soul. I interpret that a different way.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, with your interaction with Ingo, you have some of that stuff where Ingo says, in terms of contacting entities or spirits or something, don't know. So, that would also be not a good idea.
Yeah. Not a good idea. Like you think it's a spiritual thing, but it's not a spiritual thing.
It's a cauldron of black goo, and you have been abducted. Yeah, okay. But see, he had reasons though. The stuff that he was involved in was more, in affiliation, association with the military. There's some other dark stuff that goes along with that, which I would think would expose him to some of the darker elements where you, Goldilocks, are going in like, la la la, carrying your basket, here I am, off for, with peace and joy. You're not going to you won't attract the same thing. However, you do have to be discerning, because like when you got into that one area and all of a sudden you were like super high and they were saying, yep, stay, don't leave, it's good. and your guides or whoever, your guardian angel, the overseer, was saying, leave now. And you're like, devil on the shoulder, angel on the other shoulder. Which one do I listen to? Goldilocks, what did you do? You took your basket and left. Good idea. How's that? I see a movie. You said this wasn't for a YouTube video. I see. Okay, fine. You got plenty here. You got plenty to work with.
Yeah. So, I have always maintained, and I've said this many times, I say it on the Ingo Swann website, Penetration, which is Ingo's most popular book, especially with the UFO community, is an allegory.
Yes.
And everybody holds on to the stories because they're great stories. But in great stories, you can be like, oh, it's not really real. And it, for Ingo, was a double-edged sword, because with Starfire, his first novel, which I also think was a disclosure book.
I do. Yeah.
He comes very close to the truth. And Stephen Halpern, the sort of grandfather of New Age music, right? He made the album Star Children, which was going to be the soundtrack to the movie version of the book Starfire. But Steve Halpern does say that Starfire was pulled. And when he asked Ingo why it was pulled, all Ingo would say is, it's nice weather we're having. So I think Ingo knew that, okay, I can't get so close to the truth, so I'm going to make it so outrageous. I'm going to tell the story. I'm going to hide the stuff in allegories. I'm going to give you little clues, but I'm going to make the story so outrageous that at least it gets published. But the opposite thing I think has happened is because the stories are so much fun, everybody loves the story.
Yeah, I know, they get distracted. I agree. I think Starfire is absolutely slam dunk part of disclosure. And the thing is about it, though, especially since he was told, no, not going to happen. Yeah. And Halpern had the music. They had everything together to make it. But he was also under certain obligations not to say some things. And he talks about they never, in terms of a remote viewing, he could disclose this controlled remote viewing because that was never under the agreement that it couldn't be. He could actually disclose the real thing, the one that actually works and takes it away from being just a psychic thing into an actual exercise procedure. And which he says at the beginning that maybe remote viewing wasn't the right name for it to start out with, but that's how it got classified due to what was going on at the time. I wish somehow, some way that movie would be made and maybe, more contemporary setting because he brings some stuff about the consciousness and about the brain interface that makes perfect sense with what we're dealing with now in terms with AI. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I agree with you. I think it is a story for now. And I agree with you that it modernized to more what's happening now, but you could take the same story conceptually and pop it into now. And it would be to me, it's like warning of everything that we see now.
Yeah, I can see why they shut it down. It was just too much, too close to things that could happen. It was ahead of its time, but it was also, in a way of getting that kind of imagination, that storytelling, that concept deep-sixed for a while. But I still think there's room for it to come out. With Ingo's information across the board, he is, like when he talks about the reality boxes, each and every one of us has a different experience. Like your orb experience or your UFO or your vision or the entities that you experienced with that liminal space, those are unique to you. And you had a certain recipe to be at each place at a certain time with the white cars saying, okay, here's the bookmark. Yes, you're here. She's here. We don't necessarily know for certain whether that's part of our consciousness communicating or something else telling us. I mean, that's still a huge question mark in terms of how our consciousness works, not necessarily the ETs, but us, period. And that's why, I think his work is so important. And I'm so glad you followed up because you give it just another level of engagement to say, well, here, this is what I tried. This is what Ingo says. Again, don't go out and play with the entities, all right? They don't have your best interests at heart, but just listen to Uncle Ingo.
They don't, and they talk about it because I don't want to contact them. I don't want to engage with them, but I want to understand what's happening, which is why I chose places where maybe these things happen. But I also went in with my eyes wide open to this experience. And Ingo calls it our strange mind experiencing, right? Our a heightened perception. So instead of, I didn't want an out-of-body experience. I didn't want to astral travel. I didn't want to meet on some astral plane. I wanted to use my own perception to try to comprehend what was happening at these places.
I love it when the Cadillac pulls up and there's no dust, and it leaves no dust on the vehicle for one thing in the desert, really, and then leaving without dust tracks as it's rolling away. It's like, how many red flags do you need? Okay. Okay.
But I didn't understand because I had never engaged with entities before, right? Yeah. So I didn't understand. And because he came out of nowhere and we're in the middle of the desert, my first reaction is going to be, we're in cartel territory. We're in some, right?
Okay. Yeah. We're in the trafficking circuit now.
We're in the Right. It would never cross my mind that, this is an entity and we're in some spiritual vortex.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, who goes there automatically? Yeah, you have a point. you have a point. But as a trigger and a starting point for this, this adventure, I think it's perfect. It sets the tone.
Yeah, 100%, because then I recognize we aren't alone. And I recognize when I was doing my research that archaeologists have found in Indonesia rock art dating back 60,000 years, which show half human, half animal, which is the archaeologists have interpreted to be entities engaging with people 60,000 years ago. And they're painting it. And I say this in the book, in the way they're painting it, they're depicting it as a hunting scene.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's as a hunting scene.
As a hunting scene.
Okay, that makes the cow factor a little bit more
Right.
ominous. Yes, yes. And what your cow was saying, you don't want to go here, babe. No.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And don't ever go to one of these places again. Okay, I promise. No, really promise. I promise. Super swear. Not doing it. And I haven't. Even though I really wanted to sometimes, I go, no. I don't think it'll be a good experience. So.
I feel better about my guardians because they sent me to a church.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah, I was supposed to get there at a certain time. Same thing, at 10 o'clock. And when I drove, I had no idea, didn't do any research, same thing. Drove up at 10 o'clock. It was pouring rain with my mom. It's a pouring rain, and we're at this place that it's supposed to be this church. And I'm looking at this big adobe building, and I'm thinking, well, I don't know what this is. It's this big, this. Later the next day when I show up at the time that it's supposed to be there, I see that actually we were in the parking lot on the back side of this adobe church. The front side is the entrance to the church, and it's a time of year where they do all of the repairing for the adobe on the outside. The next day, beautiful sunshine, and I got there at the time, and I'm thinking, oh, this is not good because there's a funeral. But I thought I was told to show up, so I did, and I was respectful and stayed, but it's public. Everybody, this is a famous church, and I found out later. And then so, okay, learner. And so then at that point, I was able to go up and take a picture. So I went up and took a picture of the doors, beautiful, just the facade, gorgeous. And later on, when I got home, they said, okay, so what did you do when you got to the church? Well, the doors were closed, so I took a picture. And how did you have to take that picture? I had to get on my knees to get the whole picture in the view. Wow. And so, and then afterwards, it's a funeral, so the doors were never shut again during the time we were there. They were open. And so they said, so what happened? Well, I went to the church and I got on my knees to take a picture. Ha, 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 ha. We got you to the church to get on your knees. And it's the Church of St. Francis. So it was just that all this stuff you do, you listen and you get this information and you show up and then you get the result, the lesson. And so I know when you said I had to be there, I got that. I also, the least favorite part of your journey, I saw that when you wrote that down, I thought, darn it. Because that's so appropriate. All the decades, the centuries we've had. And you said the least favorite part of your journey was that, do you want to say it or do you want me to say it?
No, you say it.
Yeah. Okay. It was disheartening to realize that despite our ancestors' repeated warnings, maybe you didn't say it like that, but humanity continues to fall for the same old tricks. Gotcha. That's why that cloud is winking.
Yes.
But we have to learn. We have to learn.
We have to learn. 60,000 years ago, that's when I realized, wow, we keep falling. I mean, and so when I started, you asked me this question, when I looked at the UFO community or now the psychic community, and they're still falling for it. The way I kind of look at it is like these communities, to me, are like in an apocalyptic scene where everything, it's like this, there's scarce resources, but something drops from the sky and everybody, which would be some sort of disclosure item, right? Mm-hmm. Or manipulated disclosure item. It drops from the sky and then they're all fighting over it. And
I saw it first.
Right?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And then they're like trying to grab it from each other and then they're battling back and forth, and then they're, because the communities like dox each other. There's they go after each other on social media, whereas I'm in the valley where there's tons of resources, everything's green, everything is plentiful. Why don't you just come over here? But they'd rather stay in this like apocalyptic crap heap waiting for something to fall from the sky.
the Roy Clark song, or maybe it was just a hee-haw song. I was exposed to that as a child.
Yeah.
Doom, despair, and agony on me. Deep,
Yeah.
dark depression, excessive misery. If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. Doom, despair, and agony, or gloom, despair, and agony. Those are basically the words. Okay, I probably butchered it some, but hey, that's a kid. I remember. I was like, oh, that's a really happy song. I want to talk about the one thing that is, I think, a hidden gem in Ingo's information, and it has to do with being on the fringe, and this is on your website. There are fabulous, the remote viewing, the real story, the PDF, that's Ingo's story, 307 pages, and it's excellent. I recommend that. And then what will happen when the Soviets take over, and there's Mechanical Art Part 1 and Part 2. And this talks about, it's basically Cold War language, but the recipe is spot on in terms of completely destroying democracy. And that is, I'm like, oh my gosh, I hadn't read all that. And so it was nice to be able to refresh. So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah. Well, Ingo made me read that when he wrote it.
Okay. Yay.
And I talk about that. I talk about it in the book. I was a freshman in high school, and I actually presented it in my history class. It was like a book report. And of course, everybody laughed. And that was, my social credit score went down considerably.
But we would have at that time. That would have been completely, absolutely unimaginable. And so just a mere few decades later, and the mirror cracked.
The mirror cracked. And when you look at that book and you read about it, so of course he uses the Soviets because, and he does use Soviets, but I do think he means like communists. But actually what I mean, I interpret it as anarchists. Or you could say the New World Order, if you wanted to. We're an equivalent authoritative body that's beholden to somebody else. I mean, in 1973, Ingo wrote a letter and said there are actors at work who are beholden to invisible benefactors, that their main aim is to create an uneducated, unemployable populace through mind control. That was in his letter. And then you pair it with what will happen to you when the Soviets take over. So not if the Soviets take over, but when. And I think you can replace that word with anarchists or New World Order or what have you, or some sort of regime that's beholden to something invisible benefactors, what their game plan is. And it's not the short-term gain. It's a long-term plan.
Yes, it is.
It's a long-term plan. He articulates through this series of essays in this book.
It's scary how accurate he is, because when you're looking, if you do a template of that and just kind of contemporize it and add AI and add the algorithms that decide for us what we're going to look at and how we're going to view our news and what emphasis is in that news on what stories, we're being controlled. Okay, well, that's basic. That's basic. So the reality box there has been set to teach us a certain thing or present us a certain mind view. And then if you don't have access to a broader range of content, you're going to have that skewed view of whatever it is the algorithm is setting for you. So I'm just doing its basic, but there's more to it than that. And it's multiple levels with very few people at the top deciding what goes where and when and who gets the information and how it's manufactured or managed, down to a lower level of population who has very limited access, and any kind of pushback is determined to be an anarchist, a rebel, not needed. And so if you exclude them from view, you don't know if they are, disappeared, if they die, they're just invisible. And so then that whole platform that he lays out, that recipe, I think is brilliant, and it's actually in place. And so it's like, oh my gosh, between him and Philip K. Dick, I don't know which is worse or better or on target. Like, speaking of the positive view, I'm going to that grassy plain somewhere that looks, at the future and says, okay, we're all enlightened. We've managed to jump the hurdle of all this nonsense and find our way home. Thank you, E.T., or whoever it is that's out there saying, time to leave. You don't belong here. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll wear off. It will. It will. But yeah, that's why I went to church and got on my knees and said, thank you. Thank you for getting me here. Okay. This is really cool. And it is. It's a beautiful church. It's in Taos. And I had no idea, but I did stay in a haunted hotel. So there you go.
No, because
that was a perk. All right. So conjunction.world. I'm so glad that you did the boots on the ground for us, because the pictures that you provide while you're taking this, and then the overview and your experience, it's a delight. So I see Paula Roberts also said, hey, this is a good one. Follow it.
Yes. And, I think I haven't really marketed it because I really feel as though when people are ready and they're looking for it, it will be there.
Yeah.
But until somebody is ready, it won't make sense until somebody is ready. Like me, right? With this guy in the desert, right?
Yeah.
Like, I thought he was cartel until I realized that, well, no, he's something else much later. So it's for those people who are looking, but Ingo always said firsthand experience is the only way to really know. Yeah.
But you also have to develop a trust, knowing that, okay, I'm called to go here. There's a reason I need to be here. And the experience is something I will learn from, and trusting, again, that you had that, what you drew, that you showed the shaman back, when was it, in the 90s? And the shaman showed that there was a higher power above that. The guardian, to me, that's a guardian angel. We all have them. And mine I've heard them out loud multiple times, getting me out of a space that would have been dangerous, if not fatal. And so that's what we learn as we grow and do things we're, like I said, Goldilocks. Well, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, it wasn't a bad ending. It was a different ending.
Right.
So in Little Red Riding Hood, eventually that turned out okay. So at least in our version, this is a trust factor that we develop our own way of figuring out how to be at the right place at the right time for who we are as individuals. And then when we learn something, we can share it. And that's what you're doing. You're sharing what it's like to go in without any preconceptions, without doing any kind of projecting on what's going to happen, and just saying, okay, I'm here, now what? And then we get the benefit. So I think it's great. And I do think what you are doing is giving it the opportunity to be found by the right person at the right time. That's how it works. Thank you.
That works well. Thank you. That was a beautiful summary. I don't think I could have paid anybody to do that.
Okay. You don't know me. Okay. I'm just glad that you did it. And so it's fun to talk about, and it's fun that, knowing that some of these things I've experienced too. And you're just, giving me a time to, say, this is cool. And it's an amazing world, amazing reality. And I'm so glad, because I've learned a lot from Ingo too. And I recommend him highly. And, you have a wonderful piece of the view there with having spent time with him. And I like that. You had to do that for a class report, and they went, okay, maybe they'll get it now. Maybe they'll understand. It took 40 years for it to, actually become something that's like, oh my gosh, this is a little more frightening. Yeah. When it's staring you in the face. So anyway, the website is conjunction.world, all the things you need for background information. And then Ingo's books, ingoswann.com is that website. Anything you want to add?
Yes. So the title and the website are the same. That was my thinking.
Conjunction.world.
Yes.
Good idea.
Yeah.
You might have to follow that up. So thank you. I appreciate your time, and looking forward to where this goes.
Oh, Wendy, it is always so fun and so enlightening, and I love your stories, and thank you for just being you and for this opportunity.
Thank you. I'll put links in the description for the show. Thanks for listening.
You're filtering it through your family reference about who they are, or what they are, or what their real agenda is. And so the better time to be spending is on working on yourself and improving yourself and expanding your perception and an awareness for yourself. And that's what I really came away with from the whole experience.